Hello and welcome to another episode of a Weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing Halo 3 and then later on some Halo Reach, and we are also celebrating 6 years of weekly episodes without a single missed one. 6 years of this passion project where I slowly ramble myself into a fit of madness. 6 years of losing sniper duels and playing various other games and stuff like that, and I still am excited to make this show just about every week. You know, as I've always said, there are the occasional weeks where I'm like, damn, I need to make the Weekly Waypoint. Hasn't been one of those for a while. It's wild to me that I now have a weekly record of some facets of my life for just about as long as it takes to get through a secondary education. Actually, crap, now that I think about it, that was the case last year. I was thinking, year 7 to year 11, if you're British, that's secondary school, isn't it? But that's 5 years, not 6. It's wild to me that I've also recently reached 7 years at my retail job, which I love so very much. You know, sometimes I think about the fact that my retail job is the thing I've done sequentially for the longest in my life, and therefore does that define me? And it's fun to be able to say, well, I've also done this thing for almost as long. I try and think back to what got me to start the Weekly Waypoint, and I've talked about it before. My nan passed away, and it had me looking at her life and then my life and what I was doing, and after uni I'd been a little bit burnt out on creative projects and productivity and doing things for me, but eventually I was inspired by her life to kind of start that up again, and I've been doing it ever since in various ways, various formats, various projects, and this is definitely a through line through all of those. But it's funny because I can't even though I know, obviously that's the thing I tell myself now, because I remembered it a few years ago when I said about it, I don't necessarily remember the thought process there anymore, and that's the danger of doing something for this long, is it stops being the thing you want to do and starts being the thing you do. And I think that's why a lot of people get burned out on things, and that's why a lot of people lose sight of what makes things special. But for me, I'm still enjoying every second of this, and if I wasn't, I wouldn't be making it, Sometimes I think to myself, if a Weekly Waypoint had an end, what would that ending be? And when would I end it? And sometimes I'm like, maybe if I got to episode 300, maybe if I got to 6 years running, but always I find myself coming back to, but I don't want to end it though, so I just keep going. One day it will probably end, but also now I've got this crazy streak going. I kind of want to see how long I can keep it going for. Again, though, if it stops being fun, I will let that streak come to an end. Another thing that's got me reflecting on the passage of time and the inspiration to create versus the rudimentary necessity to create is Rooster Teeth's closure, which is something that I've already talked about since it was announced on the Weekly Waypoint, but Rooster Teeth had their final stream, their final quote-unquote production, or live production, I guess, the other day. And so that's had me thinking about it some more. I think sometimes we take for granted the fact that there are these people, these real human beings who we don't know personally, and we don't know every side of. I mean, you can't really know every side of anyone, but we know the public-facing side of, and they've been in our lives for, if you're me and you've been watching Rooster Teeth content since 2008 or whatever, a very, very long time. And you take for granted that fact. It's that they're just always there, they're just always doing their thing. And I said to my dad the other day, I was like, have I ever spoken to you about Rooster Teeth? Do you know what Rooster Teeth is? And he's like, no. And I'm like, that is an entire facet of my day-to-day life on the internet that you in your eyes doesn't exist as part of what's inside my head. And I think anyone who maybe feels that it's weird that they're getting so upset about maybe it ending or something like that, although to be fair, I've not seen a lot of that sentiment around. People are they're pretty much just sad and that's it. But if anyone is out there thinking it's just a YouTube channel, why am I sad about this? That's why, because it is a thing to mourn, even though you didn't know them personally. If you've been following them for a decent amount of time, and you feel like you know these people, even though you know, obviously, logically, that you don't know everything about these people, and they don't know that you exist, it's still a thing. It is still a thing that is ending, that, it's just change, isn't it? It's like when you move away, or when you change your job, or when someone you really like in work leaves, or there's different tiers, I guess. There's different levels of change, and we don't really talk about a YouTube channel ending, or a YouTube company, I guess a media company ending, as a noteworthy moment of change in your life, because the internet hasn't really been around long enough for that to be a thing. I guess the previous generation might look to a long-running talk show host leaving as a similar thing, but this is more than that because it's multiple people. But yeah, I wrote a little bit more about the end of Rooster Teeth on my blog at kritigri.wordpress.com. It's a blog post called Thank You Rooster Teeth. If you are watching this later down the line, you can find it by clicking on the little sidebar of blog posts. It'll probably be the only blog post that was written in April of 2024. I will also put a link in the description below. I should have just said that from the start. But in that blog post, I go over kind of like the various aspects of Rooster Teeth which appealed to me, and my history with it and what they meant to me. And yeah, that sentiment is around a lot right now. Mine isn't exactly sticking out. I posted it on the subreddit, but I'm still considering whether to turn it into a video, because there's also loads of Thank You Rooster Teeth videos out there as well. And I might do that. I might, do the thing where I read out my blog post as a script for a video and put some backing tracks and visuals or whatever. But I kind of feel like the blog post is enough. Still going back and forth on that one, personally. But enough doom and gloom about other people's YouTube careers ending. I know they would hate to call them a YouTube career. Rooster Teeth was always very adamant that it existed outside of YouTube, but that's where most of us saw them. This is my 6-year weekly Waypoint anniversary. Damn it, we're not gonna freaking, we're not gonna stick around being gloomy about one particular topic. There are other things to talk about. For instance, I touched on this a little bit last week probably, but the Fallout craze right now. I still have not seen the Fallout show, but it is being pretty universally praised. It seems like everyone loves that show. And I want to talk a little bit about Fallout and my history with Fallout, and what I'm doing there. I've always been more of an Elder Scrolls boy myself. I've always been more into fantasy than I am into, I guess you would call Fallout sci-fi, but it's obviously the post-apocalypse subgenre of sci-fi. And while I like sci-fi, I'm not a big post-apocalypse fan. I've talked about this before as well. Just in terms of theme, everyone's got personal preferences. I find it a little bit gloomy, even when the tone can be a little bit wacky and a little bit goofy sometimes in terms of Fallout. But I did try Fallout 3 various times. I think my first exposure to Fallout 3 was an old blog. People used to do these on the internet. Sometimes someone would do a blog where they were writing from the perspective of like the main character in a game. Like someone did this for Half-Life 1. I remember that was a pretty famous one. It was like, something to do with like the angry mind of Gordon Freeman or something. I don't remember. And then someone did one for Fallout 3, and it was all about their journey through the vault, the opening of that game where you kind of grow up in the vault and you leave. And I learned about the opening of Fallout 3 through that, and I found it absolutely fascinating, and I always wanted to try it for myself. But just like with the first time I played Skyrim, actually, and the first time I played Oblivion, etc., with these Bethesda RPGs, I always felt overwhelmed by that feeling when you leave the intro experience and the entire world is just sprawled out before you and you can go wherever you want and you can do anything. For the majority of players, that is a boon, that is an upside, that is what makes Bethesda RPGs so special, or I guess it did back in the day before that became a little bit more commonplace. But for me, I lost track of what I was doing. I lost motivation to keep going because probably ADHD. I was still on the 5-year waiting list for that, smiley face. And it wouldn't be until Skyrim that I finally pushed myself to be like, hey, stay on track, do a thing, get immersed in the world, and then it became one of my favourite single-player games of all time, obviously. I've also more recently done this with Oblivion, where in the past I've had troubles with that. I think I had more troubles with Oblivion because I found the main questline kind of dull, and that was the one I tried to stick with. So far in my Oblivion playthrough, I have avoided the main questline, although I will still be doing it for achievements at some point. Quick update on that, by the way, because I was doing some Oblivion videos on this channel, and they were fairly popular as far as views on my channel go. I did start to record more of that, and then unfortunately a lot of my footage was unusable because a Windows update popped up in the middle of my recording, and I only have a single monitor set up, so I can't actually see what is being recorded when I am playing the games. So I'm still not sure how to deal with that, and it killed my motivation to keep going there. But as far as Fallout is concerned, when you couple my inability to stick to such a broad game with my personal distaste of gloomy post-apocalypse worlds, I've usually bounced off them when I've tried to play them, and this might be no exception. What I'm building up to is that I am playing Fallout 3 again. But Fallout's world and lore does fascinate me. Like, I have read wiki pages about it, I have read timeline pages about it. The few times that I have played through, or not played through, but dipped into those games, I have read the terminals, and I have been enamored by, you know, the setting. The only issue is, I also get quite affected by post-apocalyptic wastelands, even when they're presented in the way that Fallout 4 presents its one. Last time I was playing through Fallout 4, I started having some really gloomy post-apocalyptic dreams, and so I put that game down again. You may remember when I started watching through The Last of Us, I did videos on like the first half of that season. I talked about how the first episode actually really affected me, and this isn't normal, I know. Other people just enjoy post-apocalyptic fiction and leave it at that, but I, you know, for some reason it just personally affects me in a way that I guess it doesn't affect other people. Probably something to do with my generalized anxiety disorder, I don't know. But it just kind of fills me with dread. That being said, I think it's important to try to go back and find a way to enjoy those experiences, because obviously I do have that curiosity, I do have that fascination with the world, I do have that drive to explore and to play through these storied games. So while all this to build up to, while I am not watching the Fallout show, I would like to. I will next time I am in the neighborhood of Amazon Prime, but that is not currently now. I am playing some more Fallout 3, and I do have a video on Fallout 3 on this channel. It's called Adventures in the Capital Wastelands. I will try to remember to put a little link in the top right of the video there if you want to open it in another tab and watch it later, or in the description below. But I am continuing that save, because that save and that video ended where it always ends when I play Fallout 3, which is I get to Moriarty's bar. That is as far as I ever get in Fallout 3. I think I've done that 2 or 3 times now. So now I am playing past that, and I am exploring the wasteland, and I am currently, I'm trying to do the main quest line, but I keep getting distracted by every little building and subway entrance I see, because, again, as gloomy as post-apocalyptic worlds are, and as much as they affect me, they are also absolutely fascinating, and Fallout 3 is, of course, no exception. So when I'm done recording this video, I'm going to go and play some more Fallout 3, and hopefully you will have an Adventures in the Capital Wasteland Volume 2 video coming at you fairly soon-ish. Speaking of Amazon, and speaking of a video series that I haven't touched in years and only did 1 episode of, I made something of an impulse purchase last night. Long-time viewers may be aware that I'm a huge fan of Darren Chan's young adult novels. I grew up with them, especially Cirque du Freak Saga and the Demon Artist Saga, and they may also know that there is a manga adaptation of the Cirque du Freak Saga, which I always wanted but was out of print, and then they started doing these reprints in omnibus editions, and I made a video on the first omnibus, which contains the first 2 volumes, which adapts the first 2 books in the series. I do own the next 2 omnibus editions, so for a while I have owned the first half of that series, but last night I decided to buy the second half of that series, and so I am going to reread the first omnibus, and then I am going to read through all of them and make videos, make blurble reasonings on every single one, because there was demand for more from that. Obviously anyone who actually wanted to see more from that has probably long since given up, because that was like 2 years ago, but that is on my agenda. So hopefully that sounds exciting for you. It certainly sounds exciting for me, and it's kind of like a celebration present for myself of 6 years at a weekly Waypoint. But if I'm being perfectly honest, I just really wanted to make sure that I had the entire series before they went out of print again. I don't know if they're ever going to go out of print again anytime soon, but the FOMO struck me, and also the desire to finish that series. Speaking of, I'm all about those transitions today. Speaking of re-experiencing old stories that I love in manga format, for the longest time now, for like years, probably ever since we started watching through Naruto, I have been wanting to rewatch Naruto, and I've been not letting myself because it is a grand endeavor. It is taking Roos years for a reason, and there are other fictional stories I want to watch for the first time, or read for the first time. So what I am instead doing, and what I have started doing since yesterday, is rereading Naruto, because while I got up to I would say the final arc of the anime, and I was all caught up by the time I got there, and then I was like, I'll continue reading the manga because I can't wait. And then I was reading the manga week to week. I never read the original manga. I've only ever seen the anime adaptation for everything up until the last arc. And when I say the last arc, I'm talking like broad arcs. I'm talking like, you know, the last kind of like, I would say, era of the manga. Naruto fans probably know what I'm talking about when I say that. So anyway, yeah, I've decided to read through the entire manga because if you don't know, the Shonen Jump app is brilliant. It used to be £1 a month, then it was £2 a month, now it's like £2.80 a month, so it has gone up, but it's still a great deal for what you can get out of it. I used it a while back to read through, or I guess reread, all of Bleach. And I also used it to read through Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. I've made videos on both of those experiences. You can find those on the channel, and I guess in the link section down below, which is going to be stacked with links to other videos at this point. And one thing I do want to do, which I know is controversial, I do want to get caught up on Boruto, because I did read the first chapter of that when it first came out. And if you don't know, Boruto starts with a heck of a hook, which I wasn't actually a huge fan of, because Naruto had just ended, and it was very fulfilling, and then Boruto started, and it was just like, what if we just undid all of that? And I was like, oh no. But for years now, that's been in the back of my head, of like, I've got to see what they're doing with that. And I did watch the Boruto anime up until the point where the movie takes place, which... there's such a weird conversation about what's filler and what's not filler. Apparently that's all filler, but I don't see how it could be because it establishes so much regarding Boruto and his classmates, but apparently it's all filler. But while people hate Boruto with a passion, I enjoyed what I watched of it. I have heard snippets of what is to come in terms of plot, and it does sound ridiculous, and it does sound like it gets away from what makes Naruto great, but I want to give it a chance because I am someone who enjoyed Jodie Whittaker's run of Doctor Who, so I'm someone who has a history of being able to enjoy things that some people think is absolute dog shit. I have a history of being able to go against the grain and make my own opinions about stories and see beyond their flaws for some of the cool ideas which remain hidden inside, I guess is another way of saying that. And I've been watching some Naruto clips on YouTube, and so I'm getting some YouTube recommendations of things that happen in Boruto, and I just keep going, what the fuck is going on? So I'm going to read through the manga. And it's really weird, like, apparently some of the manga is filler. I don't see how that could be possible. Oh, I forgot to edit this out. I had to go AFK for a second. But yeah, I'll read the manga, and then I'll look and see what's going on with that filler nonsense with the anime, and maybe watch through certain portions of the anime. And that's my plan with Naruto as well, is to, when I get to certain fight scenes, watch the animated versions of those as well, because I remember struggling to follow what was going on in the action scenes in the manga when I first started reading it, and at first I was like, maybe my manga reading literacy wasn't great at the time because I hadn't read much manga at the time. To be fair, I still haven't, but having just read through a fight scene near the start of Naruto, I honestly think Kishimoto just... maybe one of his few flaws as a mangaka is drawing fight scenes which are easy to pass. I was kind of frowning and rereading panels and going, what's going on in this panel? And I've been watching YouTube videos of other people reading through the manga for the first time because emotional vampirism, lol, and other people seem to have that same criticism, so I don't think I'm just bad at reading manga. I think that is actually probably a common criticism regarding Kishimoto's art. But goddamn, he draws some fire panels. The man is a god. So yeah, rereading Naruto is probably going to take a while, and I may make some videos about it. I don't plan on doing so, but I might change my mind. But yeah, that's something I'm doing, because I just had so much room for other narratives in my life Sigh. I held off as long as I could, but I've got to revisit Naruto. It is one of my favorite stories ever told, and it's actually been about a decade since I first, watched slash read through all of it. Also, I've been watching for a show called Life on Mars, which I thought I talked about last week, which is why I didn't talk about it this week, but I guess I didn't talk about it last week. I'm almost done with that, and I may make a video about it or talk more about it next week when I'm done, but it's got a really interesting premise. Basically, a man from 2007, gets involved in an accident and wakes up in 1973, and detective hijinks ensue. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this 6-year anniversary episode of A Weekly Waypoint. I have no plans of stopping. Obviously, this one's a little bit longer than normal because, hey, 6 years, but also I had a lot to talk about. So, thanks, and I will see you in whatever I make next.